So I think that in order to really get a deeper understanding of this case, we need to understand the interpersonal relationships between the people who lived on that property. I don't know where Daniel's brother Justin fits into all this. I will be doing my best to try and look into that a little bit more. But in this video, I do want to look at the relationships between Daniel, Janie, Malaya, and the two children. We've been told what we're supposed to believe by both Janie and Daniel, but I call BS on that. So in this video I'm going to go through a number of clips and discuss what's been said, and then by the end of this video I think we should have a better understanding of what the relationships actually were between these individuals.
You know, if something bad happens, you get like your heart drops. Mine hasn't dropped. Deep down in my heart, I do believe Jack and Lily are alive. It's not because of what people are saying. It's my heart tells me that they are alive.
That of course comes from the CBC interview that Janie did towards the end of the interview, where she's basically saying her heart tells her that the children are still alive. From this, we're supposed to believe that she cares deeply for these children, that she has this emotional connection to them, and that because of this emotional connection she knows that they are still alive. If you saw just that clip, maybe you would believe her. But when she continues to talk, particularly when you listen to things that she said on Facebook, you start to question this. I really don't believe those children had a place in Janie's heart, and that's what I'm going to examine further in this video.
And when you have to call your kids, or Jack and Lily's mother, and tell them that Jack has his boots off and Jack has his coats off, does that tell you that Malaya was watching the kids?
So I've spoken about this before in another video, so I won't dig into it too much. But you'll notice when she's talking about having to call Malaya and tell her that Jack has his boots off and Jack has his coat off, she can't even say her name. She starts by saying her kids, as in her son, and I think she was going to say, you know, your kid's partner. And then she clearly realised that that sounded even more disrespectful than everything else she'd said. So then she went to Jack and Lily's mother, still couldn't say Malaya's name. Janie disliked, and still does dislike, Malaya intensely, in my opinion. Yes, on the surface, it could sound like she is just saying that she's frustrated because the mother wasn't watching the children and she could see that Jack had his boots off, Jack had his coat off, and Malaya wasn't doing anything, and that makes her a bad mother. But when you hear the amount of gaslighting of Malaya from Janie and Daniel, then this is, to me, is probably just a one-off incident that occurred at one point in time. We don't know if maybe Malaya was about to react. Maybe she had spotted Jack had his boots and coat off and was about to react, and Janie got in first and rang her. We're only hearing one side of the story here, but we hear so often from Janie and Daniel things that are designed to make Malaya look bad. I am going to dig more into the comments that were made to discredit Malaya in another video, but I do think it is important to recognise Janie's opinion of Malaya in order to understand how that affects her view of the children.
So don't come down on me because they weren't my grandchildren, but that I do, and I do consider them my grandchildren. I don't care what anybody says. When they came into my life, they became part of my family.
Yeah, that was a quick attempt at recovery, wasn't it? So you probably heard the first part before. I've played that in other videos. When she says, don't come down on me, they're not my grandchildren. And then clearly she realises, because she bumbles around a bit and then says, and I do consider them my grandchildren. I don't care what anybody says. I'll just address that part first. I do consider them my grandchildren. I don't care what anybody says. Not, I do consider them my grandchildren because of this, and giving examples of what makes them feel like her grandchildren. Instead, straight to the defensive. I don't care what anybody says. In other words, you have to believe me, but if you don't believe me, well, you're wrong. The fact that she feels the need to convince people of this statement, that she considers them her grandchildren, suggests that the first statement is possibly not true. Especially because she then has to double down and over-explain it. When they came into my life, they became part of my family. Again, it's all very unemotional, very clinical, not showing any emotional connection to these children, not giving any examples of why she is saying that she considers them her grandchildren. When someone is working that hard to convince you of something that they've said, you've got to question the veracity of what they are saying. Now maybe we could accept this, were it not for other statements made by Janie.
So if people doubt that, then they don't think very much of me, because I'm not that kind of a person.
Now we get the emotional manipulation. So she's already given us 2 attempts at convincing us that she considers them her grandchildren, and then she has to add on to that. So if people doubt that, then they don't think very much of me. Classic emotional manipulation. Basically, if you question me, you are the worst person in the world. She's going to guilt people into accepting her story. Listen to me. You're a horrible, horrible person if you don't believe me. And she doubles down with that too, because I'm not that kind of person. So it's basically the classic emotional manipulation of the audience to prevent them from questioning her story, to force them to accept their story. Because, like I said, if they question it, well, obviously they're the arseholes, because they're horrible people if they think very little of her like that. She's essentially turning it back onto her audience and trying to force them to believe her story and guilt them into believing her story. When someone does that, straight away you've got to question, why are they trying to emotionally manipulate me to accept this statement that they have made? You can bet your bottom dollar that the reason they're doing that is because the statement is false. This is essentially a learned behaviour that young children try out when they're going through that egocentric phase when they're really little. But then as they learn empathy, they discard this technique unless they are narcissistic. And then you see them continuing it on right through into adulthood and honing their skills. Because most people are capable of empathy towards others, when a person does react like this, you must think I'm the worst person in the world if you believe this, then they feel bad and they back off. Unless, of course, they've had past experience with narcissists, with people who are good at emotional manipulation. And then they see straight through it.
It really bothers me because I've been a grandmother for 9.5 years. In the last 2 months, I can't be a grandmother anymore. I'm not a grandmother. My oldest granddaughter's birthday was on the 25th of this month, and I couldn't even see her, all because of what happened. And I had nothing to do with it. But I am the one that is suffering.
So, on the surface, this does sound like a grandmother who is devastated because she doesn't get to see any of her grandchildren. But she's here saying, I don't get to be a grandmother anymore. And what does she go straight to? Not connecting to Lily and Jack. I don't get to be a grandmother to Lily and Jack because they're gone. They're missing. And I miss being able to see them every day. No. First thing, foremost in her mind, is her real granddaughter's birthday. Her biological granddaughter's birthday. That is the first thing that comes to mind when she's talking about not being able to be a grandmother anymore. She didn't get to see her biological granddaughter on her birthday because of what happened. After telling us that she sees Lily and Jack as her grandchildren, she's now basically told us what being a grandmother means to her. And to her, that means her oldest granddaughter, her biological granddaughter, not being able to see her on her birthday. No mention of Lily and Jack when she says, I don't get to be a grandmother anymore. Straight to her own biological grandchild. And then she says, I am the one that is suffering. She resents the fact that this happened. She, by extension, she is resentful towards Lily and Jack. Because whatever happened, because of them, she doesn't get to see her own grandchild, her biological granddaughter. She is suffering because she's being denied access to her biological grandchildren. She's not suffering because she doesn't know where Lily and Jack are. She's not suffering because she misses Lily and Jack, because she misses getting to be a grandmother to them. No, she's suffering because she's cut off from her own biological grandchild. Timing-wise, I think there's also a little bit of one-upmanship here, because this came after the interview that Belinda did with CBC, where you could see that Belinda was really suffering. And I think maybe there was a little bit of jealousy going on there from Janie, because it was after that that she came out publicly and started talking. And a number of comments that she made sound like they were a reaction to things that were said by Belinda. We saw how much Belinda was hurting when she did that CBC interview. And a lot of people expressed sympathy for Belinda because they could see how much she was hurting when she did that interview. They could see how much she cares for these children. And I think Janie wanted to be a part of that. I think she's genuinely hurting because she can't see her biological grandchildren. And I think she is perhaps a little resentful of the fact that people are sympathetic towards Belinda because her grandchildren are missing. And in Janie's mind, she is a victim too, Not because of Lily and Jack being missing, but because of her being denied access to her biological grandchildren. But it's quite clear from this statement that her idea of her being suffering is because she didn't get to see her granddaughter on her birthday.
This is where the kids' swings are. This is where they always played.
And so that's where...
That's where I heard them. And I can hear everything in that trailer. If two kids get out of a fence, and Jack and Lily are all the time yelling, especially Lily, come on, Jackie, let's go, Jackie, let's go, Jackie. It's all I hear out here.
That clip, when I first saw it, told me a lot about how Janie felt about those children, because she constantly referred to them as those children. Not as much in that interview, but when you listen to the audio from Facebook, the majority of the time they are those children. But the thing with what was going on here wasn't just the context of her basically saying that she hears everything in her trailer. The suggestion that she gets no peace and quiet because these kids just don't shut up and they're loud. But when you combine the statement with the body language, then you get even more of an understanding. So I'm going to first of all replay one section where she was talking about being able to hear everything in the trailer, and watch her facial expression as she is saying it. You'll notice there is asymmetry occurring with her mouth.
And I can hear everything in that trailer. And I can hear everything in that trailer.
So the corner of her mouth goes up, but only on one side. That is a sign of contempt. It's not a good thing that she can hear everything in that trailer. She feels contempt towards these children because they are disturbing her peace and quiet. In the next bit, when she says, "It's all I hear out here," you get a quite aggressive movement with her arms, but you also, again, get the corner of the mouth quirking up again.
It's all I hear out here. It's all I hear out here.
You've got the aggressive tone of voice, you've got the punctuation of the word all, with her hands coming down in that slamming motion, and you get, again, the quirk with the lip quirking up a bit. She resents the intrusion into her peace and quiet. This is not someone who has a favourable opinion of these children.
My dog does not like Lily's loud scream, just like any dog would not like Lily's loud scream. I can't stand Lily's loud scream. If you watched her birthday party, the way she screamed, could you stand Lily's scream all the time?
Yes, I've seen that video. Yes, I've heard the loud scream. I get it. It is not something that you would want to be in the room with. However, what she's telling us here is that that's Lily. That's Lily all the time. So she's making it pretty clear that she can't tolerate Lily at all, because Lily screams all the time. Her dog doesn't like Lily. She doesn't like Lily. And no, she's not saying outright, "I don't like Lily," but she's saying, "I can't stand her scream." And she points out that this scream is all the time. In which case, basically she is telling us she cannot stand Lily. These kids are too loud. She is resentful of the way they impact her dog and the way they impact on her. This is not someone who feels any emotional connection with these children. And in case you couldn't figure it out from her words, you can tell from the harsh tone in her voice. Now, some time back, someone made a very astute comment under one of my videos, And they suggested that actually Janie resents Lily and Jack because in her eyes they are a replacement for her biological grandchildren. And that makes a lot of sense. Her biological grandchildren aren't living there. Daniel has shacked up with this new girl who has 2 kids of her own that aren't Janie's grandchildren. Janie's grandchildren are no longer with Daniel because they split up and instead Daniel's with this other woman. So I can see how there would be that resentment. And I suspect that's probably at the root of it all. So kudos to the person who made that suggestion. I think you are probably correct. You can definitely hear here how much she dislikes Lily. And I do wonder if it was a different situation, how tolerant she would be of her own biological grandchildren being outside making a noise while they are playing.
My dog reacts. My dog tells me when there's people in the yard. My dog tells me when the kids are outside. My dog is really sensitive because he's so used to being all alone here for the last for whatever the kids showed up here 2 years ago. My dog has been used to quietness. When Jack and Lily moved in here, my dog got more sensitive to sounds because of the kids yelling, screaming. So yes, my dog is very sensitive to Lily's scream and Jack screaming.
Now, I will say her dog probably is sensitive to Lily and Jack if they are outside screaming. My neighbour has workmen at the moment on the house. And anytime my dogs go outside while the workmen are there, my dogs go berserk. Because the workmen are making sounds that the dogs aren't used to. And that is dogs that are quite calm, normally don't bother about much stuff. But those noises, they're not happy with, so they react. So yes, I can see Janie's dog reacting. But there's something else going on here. Janie is really emphasising how much her dog dislikes the children. She's really emphasising how much the children have disrupted her dog's peace and quiet. Occasionally, you might get the comment where she's like, I don't like Lily's scream. But most of what she's saying here relating to Lily and Jack is she's putting it on her dog. Her dog doesn't like them. Her dog doesn't like their screaming. Her dog enjoyed peace and quiet until the children arrived. But this is actually transference. What do I mean by that? She knows that people are not going to be sympathetic towards her if she expresses her opinion in terms of that she doesn't like the children. If she outwardly talks about resenting their presence. So instead, it's all about her dog being impacted by their existence. But she slips up and gives herself away here too. She says about her dog that he's so used to being alone here for the last 20-some, and then she realises and pauses for whatever the kids showed up here. So she has gone all out pushing this narrative, and she really has pushed it. The notion that the kids upset her dog is stressed out by the children, her dog doesn't like the noise of the children, her dog doesn't like having its peace and quiet interrupted. When in actual fact, she is transferring her own feelings onto that dog. The reason she is going all out with talking about how the dog is feeling because of these children is because she knows that it's not acceptable for her to express it as her opinions. So she has to put it out there as it's about her dog. It is a classic form of manipulation that you see people do, when they know that if they put it on themselves, it's not going to be as readily accepted as if they put it onto a third party. It's about their child, it's about their dog, it's about their partner who's unwell. Usually this is a form of manipulation to get your way, because you know that if you make yourself sound like an advocate, then you're creating this false impression of empathy, and by doing so, it makes other fit people feel more inclined to feel empathy also. If you stand up and say, "This is for me," then people view that as being selfish. And when people are really good at manipulating people, this is what they'll do. So that's what she's doing here. She's putting it onto the dog. The dog hates the kids. The kids have intruded on the dog's life. And note, she talks about the kids showing up here. That implies, when you talk about someone showing up, it implies that they are not invited. It wasn't something that was arranged. It was impromptu. It just occurred. Sorry, I would have been here earlier, but my brother-in-law showed up. Meaning, I had no control over the situation. It's not what I would have wanted to occur. So even just her language there about the kids showing up shows that she is resentful of them being brought to her home. Now, she's made it pretty clear that she'll do anything for her own children, so we know that the situation was that Malaya was pregnant with Daniel's child and they had nowhere to go. So she, for Daniel's sake, allowed Malaya and the children to come to her property. But only for Daniel's sake. That is essentially the message that we're getting here.
My brother, me and Justin were out on the four-wheeler. We were up at the pipeline. We were coming out at the road called the Matheson Road. Malaya called me on my phone. She called me at 3:32. I didn't answer because we were talking to a lady on her four-wheeler with a child.
So essentially, her and Justin are supposedly out searching for Lily and Jack. Now, at the forefront of your mind would be concern for these children who are missing. And you get a phone call from their mother. And you ignore the phone call? Really? Instead, she is prioritising speaking to a stranger. She's not concerned enough about the welfare of Lily and Jack to want to immediately answer the phone when Malaya rings her. She's not concerned enough about Malaya to immediately answer the phone when Malaya rings her. Maybe she was confident enough that the children hadn't been found at that point in time. Maybe she knew enough to know that, no, Malaya wasn't ringing her because the children had been found. It must have been some sort of drama. But that still basically shows you what she thought of Malaya and what she thought of the children. Either she believed the children were missing, and she didn't give a rat's ass when Malaya rang. She didn't care enough. She wasn't concerned enough to answer her phone. Or she was aware that the children weren't going to be found because she played a part of it, which would show you how much she cared about those children. But whatever it was, at that moment in time, that stranger up on the pipeline was more important to her than Malaya, and more important to her than Lily and Jack.
And I'll tell you something else, and I don't care if you believe me or not. I would never, ever, ever let anything happen to those kids. I watched them for 2 years. I seen them day in and day out.
Okay, so in all honesty, if Janie was my neighbour, I would go out of my way to avoid her, because she does have this negativity about her. And people like that can really bring you down. But that said, we know that she's not a sociopath. She cares very deeply about her sons. She has said she would do anything for her sons. She also cares about what people think about her. That's been made pretty clear from what she's said on Facebook and stuff like that. Yes, she does try and emotionally manipulate people, but that's, not anywhere in the ballpark of a sociopath. Not when you look at the other qualities that she has. So I believe her when she says that she would never let anything happen to those children. Because she's not a sociopath. But don't confuse that with her trying to say that she really cares about those children. Because basically to her they are those children. She does not say, I'd never let anything happen to Lily and Jack. No, it's those children. And she doesn't offer anything that is suggestive of an emotional connection. She says she watched them for 2 years. She saw them day in, day out. That's not demonstrative of any sort of emotional connection. She's not saying, I adored those kids. Did you ever hear her say anything like that? Never once. She's not saying, I love those kids like they were my own grandchildren. There is no sense of emotional connection from her whatsoever. It's just that she watched them for 2 years. She saw them day in, day out. Well, there's a guy that used to live up the street from me, and he was a bit of a twat, and he used to deliberately make stupid noises going past the house to upset my dogs. And he went past every day, heading down to school or something like that. So I saw him every day. I heard him every day. I'd never had any sort of emotional connection to him. The only emotional connection I had to him was me hoping that he would move somewhere else really, really soon so I didn't have to put up with him. So saying that she saw them day in, day out for 2 years, that's not conveying any emotional connection whatsoever. And in fact, when you hear someone refer to day in, day out, it has this suggestion of tedium, never ending. This guy that went past my place and was making stupid noises to upset my dogs, it was day in, day out. You don't hear people use that sort of terminology in a positive sense. So while I agree, no, she probably wouldn't allow anything to happen to those children, that doesn't demonstrate any emotional connection. And in fact, her language tends to suggest the opposite.
I begged Malaya to come out and tell her side of the story, and she's the only one that can answer the questions that we can't. I begged her to come out and talk for the sake of the grandchildren, for the sake of her children.
Oops. She begged Malaya to come out and tell her side of the story for the sake of the grandchildren, for the sake of her children. Meaning that in Janie's eyes, Jack and Lily are Malaya's children. They're not the grandchildren. She doesn't view them as family. She doesn't view them as her grandchildren. They are Malaya's children. I suspect that a large part of her dislike of Lily and Jack originates from her dislike of Malaya. Like I said, Malaya has come in and taken the place of Daniel's former partner, former wife, whichever it is. Meaning that she's brought these children into Janie's world that aren't Janie's grandchildren. They've taken the place of the mother of Janie's grandchildren. I feel that her resentment is much stronger towards Malaya than towards Lily and Jack. And that part of her resentment towards Lily and Jack, aside from her intolerance of the amount of noise that they make, but I think there's also that level of resentment towards them because they are Malaya's children. Why am I mentioning that right now? Because she's got so caught up in her negativity towards Malaya that she forgot the part about claiming that Lily and Jack were like her own grandchildren. She was so focused on Malaya that she dropped the part about them being her grandchildren and instead referred to the grandchildren and Malaya's children. She put them in a separate category from her grandchildren. This is quite often when you get leakage, because basically they're focusing on the main topic. In this case, the main topic is Malaya. And because they're focusing on that, the secondary topic, they forget about basically what they're meant to be portraying there.
Well, that's a question that's hard for me to answer. The reason why is, if any of you have watched Malaya's video of her when she was a teenager and the way she talked about things is the way she is now. Malaya and I could not sit down and have a conversation. If it was just a brief conversation. When I first met her, when Daniel introduced me to her and the kids, it was okay. My personal opinion of her, I'm not gonna say. But let me just say, when Meadow was born, when I would go in there to see Meadow, and I would hold Meadow, she would always come and take Meadow from me and say, oh, she has to be fed or she has to be changed. She would go in the bedroom and she wouldn't come out until I would leave. When the grandfather came to see Meadow, she would do the same thing.
There's so much to unpack there in that statement that I will address it in a separate video where I just address that statement. But the main takeaway here, there was no love between Janie and Malaya. Janie makes it pretty damn clear here that she did not like Malaya, that her and Malaya did not communicate. Now, she puts it on Malaya in terms of, well, when Meadow came along, if I went into the house, she would say Meadow had to be changed or had to be fed and take her into another room. What does that tell you about the way Malaya felt around Janie? There was so much animosity between the two of them that Malaya did not want Janie to have access to her daughter. She was feeling that maternal instinct, that need to protect her daughter from this woman who to her was a threat. I think that shows you just where Malaya fits in this whole relationship. And with that sort of animosity towards Malaya, there's no way that she would be compassionate towards Malaya's children. Malaya, Lily and Jack were outsiders. They were intruders in Janie's world, and she was resentful of that.
No, I'm sorry, I don't have any pictures of Jack and Lily to share with you. I'm sorry. I don't really have any pictures of my other 2 grandchildren. And because I got to see them, the only pictures that I even have of that I get pictures of is my other 2 grandchildren. I don't have any pictures of Jack and Lily. No, I'm sorry. I got to see them every day. Every day.
Okay, can we just acknowledge, first of all, that the second time she said every day, she sounded almost exasperated. You could hear the change in the tone of her voice and the way it sort of trembled. There was a bit of a tremolo going on there. But honestly, just because you see these kids every day is not a reason to be like, no, I don't have any photos of them. If you have that emotional connection, then there are going to be moments in the day where things happen that you want to keep, moments that you want to preserve for eternity. I mean, face it, especially when you're looking at a 4 and a 6-year-old, because at that age, they so frequently do the cutest damn things. In a way, photos are like a love language. You can tell someone cares about another person or about children or about their animals when they want to have photos to preserve those moments in time. I mean, you could turn around and say, oh, well, maybe she hasn't got an up-to-date phone and can't take photos on her phone. But we know that is not the case because basically she uses it for social media and stuff like that. Where she lives, she needs to be able to access the internet for the purpose of communication because there's only like one spot on the property where you have to go and stand to get phone reception.
And for their stepfather, the silence inside the once busy home is deafening.
Going from a family of 7 to just me, I mean, I have nothing but time to just think. I haven't even got to see my own kids, not even Meadow yet.
You could go through multiple interviews that Daniel did and see little signs similar to what I've done with Janie that show that he didn't really see those children as being his own. But I thought that one clip well and truly did it. He hasn't even got to see his own children. You know, he has worked so hard to create this impression of being the caring stepfather. He's the only one who's out there speaking for them. He's the only one searching, yada, yada, yada. But that makes it clear. He doesn't see them as his children. His children are the 2 older children from his previous relationship and Meadow. Lily and Jack don't come into it. They're not his own children. So on that note, I have one more clip for you from Janie.
I watched my oldest 2 grandchildren playing with those kids for the last 2 years, and now they don't even know what's happening. They don't know what happened to Jack and Lily. They don't know where they are. It's not about me. I'm worried about my grandchildren. What impact this is having on them. I can recover from this. It's going to take me a long time. But just think what the impact has on my grandchildren and Jack and Lily.
So that comes on the tail end of this really garbled speech to do with what Jack and Lily must be feeling right now and what these other kids must be feeling right now. And she has been working so hard in that part of it to mention Lily and Jack, to remember to include them in what she's saying, that she gets to the point here at the end And she basically, this is the biggest bit of leakage we've had from her throughout. She's talking about the impact on her grandchildren and on Jack and Lily.
But just think what the impact has on my grandchildren and Jack and Lily.
All these claims about how, that they're like my own grandchildren. They became family when they came to live with me. All this stuff, it's just a put on. She feels resentment towards Malaya. She feels resentment to Lily and Jack. And just consider this. How much resentment does she feel towards them? These children are gone. And yet she still can't put aside that resentment. No, they were outsiders. Malaya was an outsider, Lily and Jack were outsiders. They were not family. They were not grandchildren in her eyes. She had her grandchildren, and then there was Lily and Jack. So on that note, thanks for listening. If you are new to my channel, please subscribe. Also, please hit that like button and please leave a comment below. YouTube loves that. It gets my videos out there into the algorithm, gets them seen by more people. So thank you, and I'll catch you in the next one.
Give a fuck about